Welcome, dear listeners, to yet another chapter in the majestic tapestry of divine providence and the eternal journey of humanity's soul. Today, we embark on a journey through one of the most momentous events in the archives of faith and freedom, the story of Moses and the Exodus. This tale is not merely a historical account, it is a narrative rich with themes of liberation, faith, and divine providence. A story that continues to resonate with every true believer around the globe. In the land of Egypt, amidst the opulence of pharaohs and the sorrow of slavery, a child was born. His name was Moses, destined to alter the course of history. Rescued from the Nile's waters by a princess, Moses was raised in Pharaoh's court, only to flee into the desert years later. A fugitive haunted by his identity and heritage. Yet, it was in this wilderness that the God's voice called out to him from a burning bush, a sight bewildering, yet sacred, commanding him to return to Egypt and lead his people to freedom. This was the moment Moses' true journey began, a mission ordained by the heavens. In the heart of ancient Egypt, under the shadow of grand pyramids and the rule of a stubborn pharaoh, the stage was set for a divine showdown. God, unseen but omnipresent, was about to unleash his might in a series of catastrophic events, plagues that would become etched in the records of history, demonstrating not just his power, but his unwavering support for his people. First, with a strike of Moses' staff upon the Nile, the lifeline of Egypt was transformed. Rivers, lakes, and even the water in vessels turned to blood. Fish perished, and the air was filled with the stench of decay. The Egyptians, dependent on the Nile for sustenance, were left to dig around the river for a sip of clear water, a grim reminder of the consequences of defiance. Then, as if summoned from the very heart of the Nile, hordes of frogs invaded Egypt. They emerged from the waters, covering the land, entering homes, and disturbing the peace of every household. The croaking was incessant, a chorus of chaos that permeated every corner of Egyptian life, a plague that tested the boundaries of tolerance and sanity. Next, with a command, the dust of the earth became gnats, swarming upon man and beast alike. These tiny creatures were a testament to the fact that even the smallest of God's creations could become a vessel of his will, a biting reminder of the plights of obstinacy. Then came the flies, a dense cloud of insects that blackened the sky. They brought with them disease and discomfort, infiltrating every home, sparing none. The distinction was clear. While the Israelites remained untouched, the Egyptians found no respite from this buzzing torment. After that, a deadly disease struck the livestock of Egypt, a blow to their economy and their pride. Cows, sheep, and camels fell in droves, a sight of despair for a civilization that prided itself on wealth and prosperity. The fields were littered with the carcasses of the dead, a morbid testament to the escalating divine judgment. Ashes turned to festering boils upon the skin of Egyptians and their animals. This affliction spared no one, from the common folk to the highest ranks in Pharaoh's court. The agony was unrelenting, a physical manifestation of the corruption and stubbornness that plagued the land. Next, hail mixed with fire rained down upon Egypt, a tempest of destruction. Crops were decimated, livestock caught in the open perished, and the very foundations of Egypt trembled under the might of God. It was a storm that shattered, not just the windows of homes, but the illusion of Pharaoh's invincibility. And in the wake of the storm, locusts swarmed in numbers unfathomable. They consumed what little was left, a blanket of destruction that left fields barren and families hungry. Egypt, once the granary of the ancient world, stood on the brink of famine. A darkness fell over Egypt, a shadow so dense it could be felt. For 3 days the sun, the very god Ra, was eclipsed, plunging the land into a gloom that mirrored the darkness in Pharaoh's heart. It was a palpable reminder of the power that had challenged Egypt's gods and won. And then, the final and most devastating plague marked the culmination of this divine onslaught. At midnight, a wail echoed through the land as the firstborn of Egypt were taken. From the humblest home to Pharaoh's palace, none were spared. It was a sorrow so profound that it finally broke Pharaoh's resolve, a sorrow that led to liberation. These plagues, each a chapter in the tale of Exodus, were not merely acts of punishment, but also profound lessons in power, faith, and liberation. They remind us that in the darkest of times, when oppression seems insurmountable, there lies a hope for deliverance, a promise that from the ashes of despair, a new dawn of freedom can emerge. As the wail of mourning for the firstborn echoed through the land of Egypt, a different sound was heard among the Hebrews, the hurried preparations for an exodus long prophesied. Under the cloak of night, families gathered their belongings dressed in haste, their loins girded, staff in hand, and the lamb's blood marking their doorposts, a divine signal of protection. They feasted on unleavened bread, the symbol of their imminent flight, ready to leave at a moment's notice. It was a night charged with anticipation, fear, and hope, as the reality of their impending liberation dawned upon them. Guided by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, the Hebrews set out from Ramses to Sukkoth, a multitude of men, women, and children, along with their flocks and herds. Their journey, however, led them to the shores of the Red Sea, where they found themselves trapped, mountains on one side, the Egyptian army thundering down on the other, and the vast, insurmountable sea before them. Fear spread through the camp as the Egyptians drew near, but Moses stood firm, his faith unshaken. In this moment of despair, the divine manifested with awe-inspiring power. At the command of God, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and a strong east wind blew throughout the night, turning seabed into dry land. The waters forming a wall on either side of the path. This was the way out, a path of salvation through the heart of the sea. With faith leading them, the Hebrews walked on dry ground, flanked by the towering waters, a miraculous passage carved by the hand of God. As the Hebrews reached the other side, with the first light of dawn breaking, the Egyptians, in their chariots and with their horsemen, pursued them into the midst of the sea. But their venture was doomed. God threw the Egyptian army into chaos, clogging their chariot wheels, making them move with difficulty. Realizing too late the power they had challenged, they sought to flee, but it was not to be. At God's command, Moses stretched out his hand once more, and the waters returned, covering chariots, horsemen, and all of Pharaoh's army that had followed the Hebrews into the sea. Not one of them survived. As the sun rose, the sea calmed, and the Hebrews beheld the great deliverance the Lord had accomplished for them that day. The awe and gratitude for their salvation overflowed in a spontaneous song of victory, led by Moses and echoed by Miriam with her tambourine. The Song of the Sea, a hymn of praise to the Lord who triumphed gloriously, was their first act of worship as a free people. The crossing of the Red Sea was more than a physical journey. It was a spiritual passage from slavery to freedom, a baptism into a new covenant with God. With the memory of Egypt behind them and the promise of the promised land ahead, the Hebrews ventured into the wilderness. The challenges of the desert awaited them, but they were no longer the same people who had left Egypt. They were a nation reborn, bound by a shared miracle and a shared destiny. This journey of faith did not end at the shores of the Red Sea, but continued in the hearts and spirits of those who walked through the waters. It is a journey that speaks across millennia, reminding us of the power of faith to guide us through the darkest nights and the most turbulent seas, leading us to our own promised lands of freedom and hope. At Mount Sinai, amidst thunder and lightning, the covenant was renewed. Moses ascended the mountain and there received the 10 Commandments, a moral and legal code that would define the newly formed nation. This moment represented not just a legalistic transaction, but a profound spiritual renewal. A people accepting their divine mission amidst the awe-inspiring presence of God. The journey to the Promised Land was fraught with challenges, from moments of doubt and rebellion to the miraculous provision of manna from heaven. Each step was a test of faith and obedience, a forging of a nation's identity in the crucible of the wilderness. The story of Moses and the Exodus culminates not in the arrival at a geographical location, but in the realization of a divine promise, a promise of liberation, identity, and destiny. Dear friends, as we conclude our journey through the story of Moses and the Exodus, let us reflect on the lessons it imparts: the power of faith to move mountains, the importance of leadership and obedience, and the unyielding promise of divine deliverance. These narratives, steeped in the miraculous and the mundane, invite us to explore our own faith and the liberating power of divine truth in our lives. Thank you for walking with us through this epic saga of faith, freedom, and divine purpose. May the story of Moses inspire you to seek your own path of spiritual liberation and to embrace the destiny that awaits those who dare to believe in the power of the divine. Until our paths cross again, keep seeking, keep believing, and may your journey be blessed.